Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And we have a returning guest who appeared back in 2019, which was episode 51. Mike Jones is Managing Director of Impact Minerals, an exploration company listed on the ASX with extensive tenement holdings within Australia, featuring significant potential high-grade mineral deposits of gold, silver, lead, zinc, copper, and nickel. Mike is a graduate of the Royal School of Mines many years ago, and is a very experienced geologist working across Australia, in particular WA. And he's here today to tell us the progress of Impact Minerals and what they've been looking and what they're looking to achieve, and give us an update on the Western Australian mining industry. So that's welcome, Mike, to the podcast. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm doing very well on a very nice summery autumn evening here in Perth.
Yeah, good to hear. Well, I'm in the UK, and I think the weather is brightening up here as well. So hopefully it'll be a good summer here. Obviously not as good as Perth. So as we always start these podcasts off, for those that obviously didn't listen to your previous episode, which was over 3 years ago, encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast, because obviously since then, which is over 3 years, a lot of things have happened with Impact Minerals, and Mike will obviously explain that. So please go back and look at that episode. For those that are just didn't listen to that episode, I just wanted to just give us an overview of the company. But also give us an overview of your career. And obviously you've had a long career in the mining industry. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career and about Impact Minerals?
No, certainly. Yeah. So graduated way back in the late 80s from the Royal School of Mines, Imperial College. Did both my undergrad and PhD studies there. And I was fortunate enough to be offered a job with Western Mining Corporation, or WMC Resources, as they became, and they offered me a job and a visa. I was probably one of the original cheap immigrant labourers in the resources sector. And I worked in their project generation team for 6 years. And then basically over the next 12 years, worked for a variety of consulting groups and also set up my own consulting group, principally doing target generation for a range of companies, juniors right through to the large global companies, putting together regional data sets to understand the geology and how that might fit with mineralization, basically in order to put a box around a target and say, look, we think those are interesting areas. And really that philosophy of generating targets is what led me to eventually start Impact Minerals, along with others at the time, a couple of ex-colleagues now. And we were originally set up with the sole purpose of finding a world-class ore body. Now, I know most juniors are out promoting and looking for new discoveries, and we'd all want to find a world-class one. But it's really been my philosophy, and increasingly so over the years, that it's literally not worth getting out of bed unless you get one of them, because the smaller ones just lead to a plethora of problems, and it takes almost as much work to get a 50,000 ounce a year gold producer into production, or gold mine, as it would to take a 200,000 ounce a year producer. So so over the years, we've been pretty discriminating in terms of the targets that we tested. But of course, to find a world-class ore body takes a long time, and there's numerous examples now that you might get lucky, but it does take an extraordinary amount of work. So if you imagine a normal distribution curve of deposits, we're sort of looking out here sort of 3, 4, 5 standard deviations from the mean, and they are rare beasts. So it's been an interesting journey over the time, and we've been a couple of places around the world, Botswana, Turkey. We got beaten by politics, and Fukushima, because we were in the nuclear space there for a while. And there's been downturns, there's been the GFC, there's been COVID, but look, we're still here. our shareholders have been very supportive, especially our major ones, and the board's been very supportive also of what we've been doing over the years. But I think, as we'll discuss, the last 3 to 6 months have really given us some exciting stuff, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, you were on the podcast 3 years ago. I wanted you to just give us an update from 3 years ago to sort of present day. And as you mentioned, a lot of activities happened over the last 3 to 6 months. So obviously, you can cover that as well. So yeah, can you give us the update from or since 2019?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, 2018 into 2019 were actually probably one of the worst years in terms of market reaction to the exploration space. We had a couple of good years, 16, 17, and really it was a death by 1,000 cuts, and it was a pretty interesting and demoralizing time. And but then all of a sudden things started to climb out. So gold came back, lithium started to raise its head, and then all of a sudden, of course, COVID hit. So now we had all of our projects at that stage were in the eastern states, gold in Queensland, and then 2 major projects in New South Wales, they're both on the eastern side of Australia. One in the Lachlan Fold Belt, which is a world famous copper gold belt, and then also a lot of ground around Broken Hill, which is the home to one of the world's great ore deposits. It's a silver lead zinc deposit found in the 1880s. Been mined basically continuously ever since, and we've always had a significant ground position there. So look, it did become difficult to operate over in the eastern states because of COVID, and also at around about the same time there was a major discovery here in Perth, the Julimar discovery of Chalice mining. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with that. They announced an upgrade to the resource this week, 30 million ounces equivalent of palladium, and or 3 million tons equivalent of nickel. So it's a huge discovery, world class. We're all kicking ourselves because it is just outside Perth, next to the state forest, and I've actually done orienteering over the top of that bloody thing. So as I say, it wasn't just me, but congratulations to Chalice. So with the COVID and that, we ended up staking quite a lot of new ground back here in Western Australia. And so we refocused back here for logistics reasons, but also the 2 projects in the eastern states were quite mature, and raising another, 3 to 5 million to spend on those was really not making the market, that interested. And we'd get a better bang for a buck with some new projects back here in WA. And that was very successful for us. We pegged a very large piece of ground along trend from Julimar, and started to generate some significant results from that. So that's really the potted history. But then really in the last 3-4 months, significant changes that we've been working on for the previous 3 months. First is that we are one of the first 7 companies globally to be chosen to be part of the BHP Xplor program, which we can talk about. And then secondly, last week we announced the acquisition or an earn-in joint venture into what I believe is a world-class deposit found by somebody else, but has a set of unique features about it, which when I saw it, it was a case of, oh, we have to do this. It's putting us immediately on the road to development and production. And it's a very interesting, globally unique deposit, and very suited for us at Impact. I like looking at those strange things. It's certainly definitely out there on the 4 or 5 sigma away from the mean, and we're starting to generate some significant interest in that. So happy to talk about that further.
Yeah, well, let's start with this new acquisition. So I just wonder if you can tell our audience a little bit about the acquisition.
Certainly. The project we're buying into, or earning into, is the Lake Hope high purity alumina project. Now, high purity alumina, for those people that aren't familiar with it, is a bit of it's a niche field in a way, but has a tremendous growing demand for use in 2 main areas, which are LED lights, and as we're replacing incandescent lights, globally, and there's been a massive demand for LEDs. Then the second big use is actually in the separators between the cathode and the anode in lithium-ion batteries. And if you recall the Samsung exploding phones, a few years ago, that's because the separator wasn't doing its job. and the HPA is particularly important in those separators. And of course, lithium-ion batteries going bananas, and forecast demand to increase tremendously over the next 10 years. So the forecast demand for HPA is very significant. And this project, globally unique from a geological perspective, and the guy that founded it also came up with a process that is very cost disruptive because of the unique nature of the minerals in the lake, and it's a dry lake, which we'll talk about. And all in all, it is a vastly underestimated and unexpected discovery. It is fantastic. It's going to be world class, and we're very excited about that.
So I wonder if you just tell us a little bit more about the nature of the deposit, and I suppose what are the advantages for mining this particular deposit?
Yeah. So look, if people can go to the website, there's the announcement, and there's also a couple of presentations that I've done in the last week. But basically, within the top 2 meters of the lake, and it's a dry lake. So we have a ton. So these salt lakes, which are dotted across Western Australia, are well known for hosting a variety of minerals, and that the type of mineral varies significantly where you are in the state because of the climatic changes. So in this particular part of the state, there's a particular evaporite set of minerals that are precipitated from the wind and the rain and mixed in with aluminium and potassium that's come from the granites, and produced a bed that's about 2 meters thick, no more than that, sitting on granite. And it's basically almost direct shipping ore. The material there is very high grade. It's alumina, so aluminium oxide, Al2O3, and it's running about 25%. Now we've got an exploration target. Sounds a bit laborious to say all that, but we haven't got to a resource yet. But we have done enough drilling to do a resource, but that is coming in the next month or so. So there's between 630,000 tonnes and 1.25 million tonnes of aluminium oxide, alumina, and that's contained within something between 2.5 to 4.5 million tonnes of ore. So that's the sort of number. Pick a middle figure. So there's about 4 million tonnes of ore. The average grade is between 24 and 27%. So if you pick 25%, then it gives us a middle range of about 1 million tonnes of alumina. And we believe that we can convert much of that into high purity alumina. And again, I can't give the absolute numbers, and I'm sure you can do the calculation in your head. That material, the benchmark for that material, is currently selling at about $20,000 per ton. So you can add the number of zeros on that, and you get a number that's very, very large. And it's hard to believe that it's sitting there in the top 2 meters of the lake. So it's shallow, it's free digging, it's naturally very fine grained. It doesn't need crushing, doesn't need grinding. There's no pre-strip. We will literally use a digger and a truck, and I'm not exaggerating, to remove the material from site and leave a hole in the ground that's probably no more than 2 meters deep. There'll be no tailings on site, and there'll be no processing facilities. So from the unique geology of this lake, has delivered unbelievable advantages for mining, which remove also some significant environmental barriers, and also limited rehabilitation required at the end of it. So when I first saw that, it was like, oh my goodness, this is an unbelievable breakthrough in thinking about how alumina minerals might form and where. And we're lucky enough to have picked up the project.
So what's the timeline to production?
So look, I think with the lesser environmental requirements, and look, it's early days, we've still got to do the surveys and things. I think we can move towards early development over the next 3 years, possibly quicker, but I don't want to overpromise. But we're entering the PFS, pre-feasibility studies, right now as we speak, just appointing all the experts and the managers for that study, and that'll be coming to fruition over the next 12 to 18 months. We'll be lodging the mining lease application by Q3 this year. Once the resource is out, we've got a scoping study level mine plan coming together. Those are the two key things that we'll need to lodge the mining lease application, and then we can get the whole approvals process going. The other thing that that's a significant part of the pre-feasibility study is where we're going to put the processing plant. So because we can take the material off site and we have this cost-disruptive metallurgical process, we're going to be able to build the plant in an industrial yard somewhere. And there's probably three main candidates: a Kwinana, which is near Perth. That's becoming a battery hub, if you like, for downstream processing. We can build it in Esperance, where there's already sulfuric acid, which is the key reagent that we need, is already coming into that port. Or perhaps even in somewhere like Kalgoorlie in regional WA, where there are grant incentives to build processing plants and other facilities in regional WA. So the fact that the trucking costs will be so low, trucking and mining, gives us a lot of optionality as to where we can put the processing plant. So that'll be one of the key things for us as well in terms of the timing of production.
You mentioned HPA. I just wanted to just tell the audience a little bit about what HPA is, and what is the forecast demand for that? Yeah.
So HPA is short for high purity alumina. It is an industrial mineral, and it has been produced globally at the moment by direct beneficiation of aluminium metal via the Bayer process. So we have the world's global bauxite mines producing aluminium metal for a range of uses, of course. Some of that is used to produce high purity metal in a fairly sort of dirty process. And the costs of production of those things, as far as we can gather, are sort of in that $15,000 to $20,000 per ton. So the main uses of it, as we said, they're in lithium-ion batteries as separators. They're in the LED lights. They are increasingly used in semiconductors. Big demand for that, although it's not a very large market. And also for sapphire glass. So every mobile phone in the world, has sapphire glass on the front. A lot of that is produced directly from HPA. Again, not a very large market in terms of tons, but certainly growing and one of the key uses. So that's HPA.
Is there anything else you just want to add on that particular project before we then speak about the BHP Xplor?
Sure. Look, people need to keep their eye open for the resource and the scoping study, which will be coming in this next quarter, May to June time. Once people see the numbers on the economics, they'll understand how capital efficient this project's going to be, what the numbers are on the EBITDA. This is basically a 50 to 100 year mine life on this one project alone. So we aim to be one of the lowest cost producers in the market, if not the lowest. We're working on some breakthroughs with the metallurgical processing. And I think this is going to be a bit of a slow burn because it was a left turn for impact compared to what it was doing. Then people will see the value that we see. And I think this is a good time to be looking at us before that comes out.
Yeah. So moving on, as you alluded earlier in the introduction, that you've now got an agreement with BHP Xplor as being one of the first companies involved in this particular project. Wanted to again give us the audience an overview of what this agreement is, what the outlook is for the company.
Sure. So BHP internally over the last few years had realised that they weren't really getting access to enough projects globally to see, where the next generation of copper and nickel projects were going to come from, and they're quite willing to admit that they're quite slow and lumbering when they are moving through evaluating their projects, and they have a very good project generation and business evaluation development team, but they realised they needed to speed up this process. And so they came up with a concept of accelerating exploration for the key metals, copper and nickel in particular, that are going to be needed to drive the energy transition. And they came up with a model whereby they would put it out to the global junior sector, looking for ideas, concepts and projects that would lead to the next round of discoveries, and look to support those companies that they thought had the best projects. So it is groundbreaking. It's certainly groundbreaking in terms of the way a major company interacts with a junior company. And we've been very privileged to be one of the first 7 companies globally to be part of that program. The 7 companies, there are 3 listed ones, interestingly, all from the ASX, and then 4 private companies. And so myself, then there's Nordic Nickel, and then Kingsrose Mining are the 2 other ASX groups. And look, we've only been on the program 3 months. I can explain more detail how it works, but it's been a fantastic experience so far.
Yeah. What is the criteria BHP are actually looking for in a junior miner? And I suppose why have they chosen Impact Minerals as one of the companies?
So they're looking for breakthrough ideas from innovative thinkers and explorers globally. And obviously, they think they need projects that might deliver something that's of a size that's going to, move the dial, as they say, for BHP, which is obviously something significant. And so they've come up with this support program. So the way it works is they've given us $500,000 over 6 months to accelerate the exploration. In this case, it's on our Broken Hill project, which, of course, that's where BHP started. The BH stands for Broken Hill. And so we managed to persuade them to come back to the future and come back to Broken Hill. But we went to them with a new model for copper mineralization, which, again, wasn't our model particularly. There's a well-known consultant in Tasmania, Professor Tony Crawford, and his co-workers came up with an idea that perhaps underneath the Broken Hill silver lead zinc deposit is a large copper deposit somewhere waiting to be found. And because of the complexity of the deformation and the metamorphism that has affected that ore body since it was formed, has been scrunched up and turned around, it's likely then, if the copper is there, that it's going to be at depth, or perhaps it's been eroded away. So we went to them with a concept that we had found field evidence for the processes required to form copper, and that as a result, that if they gave us the money, we'd be able to identify some new areas for copper. And they seemed to like the idea. We were very specific about the size of deposit that we were looking for, the methodology that we would have to do it, and they liked the idea. It's a concept that I tried to sell to a number of the other major mining groups, over the years. And in terms of the speed, we applied in August, I think September. They made the decision in early October for the next round. We did an online interview. They invited 16 groups to Houston for the final interview, and then they awarded us to be part of the program in January. So it happened very quickly. But not only are they giving us the money, they're actually also giving us what can be best described as a business coaching course, whereby they've given us the strategies that they use, the mineral systems approaches that they use, methods of risk management for our field work, and also how to deal with vendors and business chemistry. It's been a really interesting experience, even for me, with all these grey hairs. I've learned a lot. But also it's a case of, look, if you want to work with BHP long-term, and they're looking for long-term partners, you need to be able to speak their language, in particular things like risk. I mean, we all understand that, they want to make sure that they're working with people who are professional, they've got the right risk management procedures in place, not just for safety in the field, but, for their whole business. And look, the number of benefits have been tremendous. So it's been a great program so far.
Yeah. What would you say this partnership is going to create for Impact Minerals? Why? What would you say, how it's going to impact the company?
Yeah, look, it certainly put the eyes of the world onto the 3 listed companies in particular. Look, at the end of the 6 months, BHP has the option then to basically earn an interest in the project if they would like. Whether they will or not remains to be seen. There are 7 very good projects. We don't know what their budgets are or what their selection criteria will be. So look, I don't know what the short-term outcome is going to be, but what I do know is that we now have some long-term partners in BHP for problems. I mean, they've got people on the hotline, for example, their global ESG and heritage manager, if we need to speak to them, we're there, and that'll extend sort of past the initial 6 months. And, of course, they're hopeful that, if we find something of significance, further down the track, that, they might be the first partners of choice. But it's been an exceptional experience so far, and all credit to them for giving it a go.
Is there any advice that you can give any other potential junior miners that may want to explore this particular partnership opportunity? I take it obviously there's only going to be a select number of junior miners that can be in a position to be selected. But is there any advice that you can give any junior miners that may be listening to this podcast?
Well, the first piece of advice is definitely give it a go. It's a great program if you get on it. It's going to be run annually, so I think the next round of applications opens maybe September, and recommend everyone apply. I think you made a comment about junior miners. Actually, it's an interesting range of people because in the private sector, we've basically got a professor that came up with an idea and one of his students. That's one of the groups. So they're not focused on junior explorers. It's more about the quality of the idea, and I will say the quality of the people. They're not going to deal with people who are, a bit left of centre rather than right of centre. So got to have the right attitude, the right approach, and be passionate about about your project. And as long as it's technically thought out. For a fee, I'll help people fill in the form. But no, it's relatively straightforward, and definitely worth getting on for everyone.
Yeah, and obviously there's plenty of time now until obviously September to think about this and obviously build a case to then obviously apply in September. I suppose lastly, or a couple more questions, how is the WA market at the moment, the mining industry? I speak to obviously many candidates and clients, and things look good. I just wondered from your perspective, having been in the industry for many years, how is the WA mining market at the moment from, I suppose, all different perspectives, whether it's companies, new discoveries, skills, etc.?
Yeah, look, certainly, 2021, was such a massive year, drilling companies expanding, billions of dollars raised across the junior sector in particular, the existing producers going gangbusters, it was an amazing year. And then, of course, 2022 hit, fairly hard, if you like. But there was a lot of lead time and lag time, from all the work that had been done in 2021. So I think towards the end of 22, everyone was like, well, thank God things have eased off a little bit. But then, of course, we've gone the other way, so there's probably eased off a little bit more than certainly what most of the drilling companies want to do. But I think we're humming along at the moment at sort of like a good level. People have got a little bit more time. There's not as much drilling going on, so the lab turnaround times are picking up. I've been around. You're quite right. I've been around a long time, and the thing that is always in the back of my mind is how quickly the tap gets turned off for funding when bad things happen. And obviously, almost out of the blue, within a few weeks, we've seen the banking crisis, emerge. And I can tell you from experience that if that was to go any worse, there'd be no money and everyone would be closing up shop, very, very quickly. Seem to have come out of it a little bit. But for those of us old enough to remember the savings and loans crisis, this is exactly the same problem, where lots of the junior and regional banks are upside down on their interest rates. And they have no liquidity. They're basically, many of them are insolvent, that just leads to bank runs, et cetera, and that's what happened back in the 80s. Look, I don't think we're out of the woods, but look, the last week's been fantastic. It's booming along. People forget that globally, despite China that's the big growth, but across Africa, Southeast Asia, many countries are just starting to they're still growing. Technology's coming. They're putting in the copper lines. They're putting in the power. They're putting in the things as the whole world is slowly being lifted out of poverty. And now we've got the legislated targets for decarbonisation. And we're all aware that the governments haven't thought through the figures of how much copper, nickel, lithium, HPA that we're going to need. And so hopefully the mining industry will benefit from that, because there are many, many undervalued companies. We have an image problem in the marketplace globally. The more that we can do to prove our green credentials, the better. And people have to come to an understanding that if they want this new world, we're going to have to dig at least some holes. But they're not very big, and we should be able to get there.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that you said there. Lastly, as a conclusion, what's the outlook for Impact Minerals for the remainder of the year? And obviously, you've covered a lot, and obviously exciting times ahead. But as a conclusion, what's the outlook?
Yeah, look, the future's never been brighter for us. We've now got a world-class project that we're going to push towards development. We've got a mining lease application going in mid-year. We've got the PFS going. We'll run the DFS, definitive feasibility study, almost in parallel, because, as I say, the mining is so simple and straightforward. All of the focus is on the metallurgical processing, and then also producing the final product, which does need high specifications for the end market. That's where it's going to be. Because the cost of the PFS is actually relatively small, we're still going to keep exploring on our flagship Arkham project for nickel copper PGE. So we're still going to deliver exploration results. We're hopeful, of course, that BHP might come back and invest further, and get to do some drilling on that project later in the year. So look, it's going to be an action-packed year. I will say that since I've started promoting the Lake Hope project, we've had calls from as far away as very well-known mining entrepreneurs, organisations in London, to talk to them about this project, because people are starting to, as I said, it's a slow burn. People have got an opportunity to sort of get on board now before the story really gets out in terms of what this project could mean for us at Impact in particular. So watch this space. Yeah,
Mike, really appreciate your time. Congratulations, obviously, on the acquisition, and obviously being having a partnership with BHP Xplor. So obviously wish you well for the remainder of the year, and perhaps maybe come on later this year to give us an update on see how things are going.
That'd be great, Rob. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no worries. Also, lastly, I suppose if any of our audience wants to obviously reach out to you, if they've got any questions, if they want help with their application to obviously try and partner with BHP Xplor, how can our audience reach you, and also how can they follow your story as well?
Yeah, look, we're on the socials, so LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, but LinkedIn in particular. They can always contact me through that. We have an info@impactminerals.com.au email. They can sign up on the website. We've got a very new product investor hub where we have a lot of interaction with our shareholders on a one-to-one basis. They're certainly welcome to sign up to that as well. So plenty of ways of contacting us.
Yeah, we'll include those in the show notes accompanying this podcast episode for easy access for any of our audience to obviously reach out to you. Really appreciate your time again, Mike, and hopefully we can chat later this year. For those that are listening, great episode, and obviously feel free to follow Mike and Impact Minerals' journey, especially if you're looking to further develop your mining company or your resource. Obviously, you can look at looking at applying to BHP Xplor. And obviously, what a great opportunity for some of the companies out there. Appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing this episode and the podcast to further around the world, no matter what country or jurisdiction that you're in. Appreciate your continued support. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.